Hello, hello. So we have Brittany and Benjamin. Hi. Hi, Brittany. So you guys are on mute. You're,
Hello.
you're automatically on mute when you come into the room. So if you want to say something, you're going to have to unmute. Brittany, did you get your tire fixed?
My dad's still fixing it, so I borrowed his car.
Oh, okay. So you got your stuff?
Yes.
Good, good. Benjamin, you got your stuff?
Yep.
No problems?
No, I got
Good.
free asparagus too.
What's that? Free asparagus as well?
Yeah.
That's a bonus.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's see, Juan is arriving. Ashley, Sarah. Scott. Hi, Juan. How are you?
Good. Good. How are you?
Very good. You're in your kitchen. I like that.
I am.
That's great. I'm adjacent to my kitchen.
Okay. You have a nice
I'm
kitchen.
looking at it. You're looking the other way.
Oh, I see. Did you build your kitchen yourself?
Me? No.
It came with the house.
Yeah, we're actually, one of the first things we did when we moved in last year is we repainted the cabinets, and we've decided we don't like that color, so we're going to repaint. We're going to repaint them again. And if you saw my kitchen tour video, my sink is broken. The faucet is actually, but we have the sink, and now it's just a matter of getting somebody over here to put the big sink in for us. Yeah, so we're working on it. It's a work in progress. It's a great house, and we like it. It's got plenty of room in the kitchen.
That's what's important.
Yes.
What are we going to be doing today?
We're going to be doing pretty much everything that we do the first day of class. I'm going to be talking to you guys about how these assessments are going to go, I'm sorry, I'm reading the panel on the side at the same time.
Yeah,
how these classes are going to run. I took the entire class, and I told myself that I didn't really want to teach this class if I had to give stuff up. So I wanted to be able to do this class with really pretty much everything that we do at school. So it's, of course, the delivery format is going to be a little bit different. Your time is going to be a little bit different, but we still have pretty much everything. The only thing that we're not going to do in this class that we do at school, and I think I mentioned this in one of my emails or videos, we're not going to be doing sugar work because no. Sugar work is hard enough to do when you're at the Culinary Center. And then we're not going to do, the very last week is what we call complex cakes. And we're going to do a lot of the individual components at various points during the class, but we're not going to do a complex cake. And the reason I chose to take that out is, one, that it's really difficult to do remotely. And two, you're going to get that. When you go into specialty production baking, into that class for Chef Doug, you're going to have the cake master at your disposal to learn about complex cakes. I don't know if you've met Chef Doug, but he worked for Cousteau's in Pittsburgh for a number of years, and he did all the wedding cakes around Sonoma County. He did my stepdaughter's wedding cake, and he owned his own bakery for a long time, and cakes is his thing. So in my previous class that I just finished teaching, I actually had Chef Doug come into my class, and he did some of the demo work for complex cakes. So I have removed that part from this class, but you will get it when you're in specialty production baking. All right.
Sounds cool.
Fat and sugar. Sugar is one of my, we don't always get along, Sugar and I. So, so we'll see. But you'll get that also in specialty production baking. You guys will do caramel work and pulled sugar and spun sugar. And that's fun to do. If you get it right, and if it's not raining outside. If it's raining, sugar work is a pain, however. All right, so see, we got what, 14 people here. Hi Scott, how are you? Oceana, Brittany, Ashley, Mario, Lisa, yeah, Kate. Hi Kate. How are you? Sheila, how are you? Is Mark standing behind you directing? All right, so you're on mute, Sheila. You're on mute. All right. So for those arriving, I have this meeting set up that when you come into the room, you're automatically on mute. So if you want to say something or ask a question to the group, you're going to have to unmute yourself. Uh-oh, I think we lost her. Oh, no, there you are. My screen shifted. So if you want to ask a question, unmute yourself. If you're just listening and I'm lecturing or I'm screen sharing and showing you PowerPoints, I would really prefer that you put yourself back on mute. Some of you, and myself included, we have pets. We have kids sometimes. I don't have kids here, but you know, they might inadvertently run in, make some noise. It's very distracting for the rest of us. So just kind of keep that in mind. So it seems like everybody found us. I've been adding content to Canvas at a furious pace. I think I added 5 or 6 different videos just this morning. I have a little bit more to go. But I expect that this first day is going to be very similar to what you might expect when you come to the in-person class. At least that's my intent. So since I think most everybody is here, everybody get their stuff. Everybody, you know, everybody have thumbs up. Everybody got their stuff.
Yes.
No problem with the pickup, everything. All right. So just, yes, Kate. Kate, you know there's a chat window, Kate, and you can type something into there.
You know what? It's just as well I'll use the chat. That'll
Okay.
work. Because basically, well, let me just ask. Now, if we have gone through, we're working, we're seeing what we're doing, and we notice that we don't have something like all of a sudden
Your computer freezes up like that? Okay. So that's going to happen to us as well. It's been happening to me over the last few days. Yesterday during my meats and sauces class, my computer was acting up a little bit. So we
2
lost
weeks
Kate
and then, huh?
early. We're losing you, Kate. So to answer your question, I think I know what you're asking. Just keep in touch with me the best you can.
Okay.
I know that you're going to go through a lot of flour. I went through 10 pounds of flour doing these bread videos. of my own flour before I even got to the culinary center. So thankfully we had a pretty good stockpile already. So keep me up to date with how your supplies are doing. It's still a little iffy. We're flying a little bit under the radar at culinary. They don't want students coming on campus at all.
Right.
But we have pleaded with them and we've convinced them that since we are culinary students and we study specifically sanitation techniques, and that we have a good system set up, they're kind of looking the other way. But they don't like us coming every week. They wanted us to, can't you just give it to them all at once? And I'm like, no, we can't. So, so that's kind of where we are. And we're just keeping our fingers crossed that they continue to let us do this schedule. We don't see any pushback at all. We don't expect any problems, but that's kind of where we are with the supplies. As far as the lockers go, I know lockers is another question. We wanted to get through all the first round of class deliveries first, and then we're going to put together a time and a time period for each class. So if you have things in your locker at campus and you need to get to them, we'll talk to you individually and set up times and dates for you to come by and pick up your stuff outside the building. We'll have somebody open your locker, get your stuff out and bring it and put it outside the building when you're there. Kind of like what we did with all the supplies and everything. So that's going on. Refunds and fees. I think they've got those figured out. So if you have another class that got canceled, those refunds should be coming shortly. That's my understanding. They've decided not to mess around and diddle about due dates and things like that. They're just going to process everything. That's my understanding. That's what we've been told, although it's a little bit kind of crazy up in the air, as you might imagine. All right. So welcome to Intro to Baking. I'm Chef Jim. This is going to be a fun class, I think. I've had a lot of fun doing the breads and figuring out how to do this. To be quite honest, I was a little skeptical and I did a few things. I'm like, you know what? We can do this. This is good. I've been talking. I have a very good friend who runs a culinary program in South Carolina at Myrtle Beach at Horry County Technical. And we spent a lot of time on the phone and we're sharing videos and you'll see some of his videos. His name is Chef Jeff Blunt, and he was just on the Holiday Baking Championship on the Food Network.
Oh.
Yeah. So he's a great guy. He's a great baker. He and I went to culinary school together. So he's going to be kind of a guest lecturer. I just posted another video this morning from another former JC student. His name is Conrad. Conrad, after he graduated, he went on to work for America's Test Kitchen. And he was on cruise ships doing demos for tourists. He's very tall, he's nice looking, he's very square shouldered, and he loves bread. And he has a great delivery. So I put his pizza video up just this morning. Take a look at that. So we'll have some content like that. Most of the content is going to be from me. I made a decision early on in planning this class that I was going to turn my kitchen into my classroom, into my lab. We had the option of doing all these videos from the Culinary Center, but I thought it only fair if you guys are at home using your stuff at home, that's what I'm going to do. So we're not going to have all the advantages that we have at the Culinary Center, but you and I, we're going to share those pains. And you've already seen, if you've watched my bread videos yet, you've already seen some of those pains. So I really want to try to replicate what you guys are facing the best that I can. So that's kind of the approach that I'm taking with all of this. As far as the assessments go, I'm going to want you to document what you do very well. So whether that's either taking a short video of you doing the process and then pictures of the final product, however you want to do that, is okay, but any video that you do, I want to keep it under 10 minutes. And I want to see you in the picture. I want to know that it's you that's done that. And I'm hoping that when I see those pictures, you're going to be in your chef's uniform. And I really appreciate seeing everybody in their chef's uniform this morning. You know, I'm going to look at your hands. Have your fingernails been trimmed? Are you wearing jewelry? You know, are you wearing your hat? I'm going to be looking at all that, just like I do in class. So here I am, I'm in class. I got up ready this morning. I'm in my chef's pants and I've been baking this morning already. I think that changing into your chef's uniform, it kind of switches your mind. And now you're in a mindset. Now you're working. Now you're cooking. And now you're even more aware of your hands and what you're doing and your touching and your sanitation. So it's almost like, okay, so now I'm at work. I put on my coat. Here we go. So again, I appreciate seeing everybody in their chef's coat. So document what you're doing. Have fun with it. I've had to have some creative ways of doing things. I know everybody's going to face some challenges, but everything that I've done so far, I've done with my iPhone. Nothing else. I have a nice Canon camera, but it's too complicated. I have to download it, I have to edit it, splice it together. With my iPhone, I can just shoot it and I can send it right to YouTube. Done. Really easy. And I've loved being able to do that, and it's just fine. I've already had 2 of my meats and sauces students. They did one of their first assignment last night. One of them had never cut a chicken before in their life. I almost cried watching that video. I was so happy. And she did a really great job, but it was just a very simple video. So I'm looking for something like that from you guys, some good documentation on what you've done. And I'm also going to ask you to self-assess, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. That's what we do. We do that in Pro Cooking Basics, and we do that in all the baking classes. And that's basically where you teach yourself how to assess your own work. I'll give you standards that you need to go by, and then you're going to figure it out yourself, because learning how to self-assess is a great skill. Chef Jim's not always going to be there to tell you it's too dark, it's not cooked long enough. You need to be able to determine on your own, is this acceptable? So we'll get into that. So let's see. A little bit about me really quick, because I know not everybody here has had me. About half of you have had me in other classes. I went to community college in Charlotte, North Carolina, and got my degree at Central Piedmont Community College. That's also where I started teaching. The year I graduated, they asked me back to teach a garde manger class the next semester. So I taught part-time, and I worked as a chef / pastry chef at the same time. So at CP, Central Piedmont, I taught a wide variety of classes. I taught baking, garde manger, I taught purchasing. And all the time I was working full-time as an executive chef somewhere. I stopped teaching in restaurants in 1999 and started training for the military. I started working for the Military Sealift Command. There was a team of 4 of us, and we went worldwide. There was 125 ships, and we tried to get to all of them. And we got to most of them during my 7 years there. So I've traveled a lot, seen a lot of different stuff, and have a pretty deep resume when it comes to teaching, and especially baking. I was the baking instructor on our little military team. So I've worked in private restaurants, hotels. One of my good friends was the executive chef at this Charlotte Motor Speedway, or Lowe's Motor Speedway, just outside of Charlotte. And twice a year, my wife and I would go help him feed 5,000 screaming NASCAR fans. So we have kind of a wide variety of experience between my wife and I. So in 2007, we both moved here. She is my wife, she's the executive sous chef up at Rodney Strong. And unfortunately, their entire hospitality department has been furloughed. So they're all shut down. Excuse me. But we live up here in Cloverdale, and we love it. So I have experience on both sides. I also teach cafe. I teach all the baking classes, so I'm kind of all over the place. So that's a little bit about me. Let's take a look real quick at Canvas. So I'm still learning how to do all this, so be patient with me. I thought I could share the whole screen. Oh, sorry. I have to get to it first. There it is. All right. There it is. Come here, you. Ta-da. All right. So here we are. This is our Canvas page. This is where we're all going to meet. One thing you need to know from a technical standpoint, from a teaching standpoint, from me that affects me, is when I screen share like this, I can't see all of you anymore, and I can't see the chat window. So if you're typing a question in the chat window off to the side while I'm screen sharing, unfortunately, I can't see it. So just unmute yourself and sing out, and I'll stop for a second. All right, so we start with the syllabus. The syllabus has been pasted in, so you shouldn't have to download it. You should be able to just see it and to read it. So here's my email. I, of course, am on email almost 24/7 now, it seems like. So you can reach me very quickly by email. My voicemail, that's my office voicemail. And believe it or not, if you call that number, it goes right to my email. So I'll get a notice pretty much right away if you call my office and leave a message, and I can actually listen to your voicemail through my email. So either way is an effective way to get to me. If you have concerns, problems, and need to meet, or you're confused about something, please reach out, set up a Zoom appointment with me. I'm happy to do it. I've been doing a lot of it lately, getting pretty good at it. So no, I don't mind at all. One thing that we're going to miss in this process is the interpersonal interaction. So I'm going to make up for it as much as I can by being available to you for one-on-one consultation. We're still going to meet these objectives. We're going to talk about local and seasonal products. I have one of the advantages of teaching from here is that I've been working on my garden since I moved in. And while I still have a ways to go and it's a little early in the season, I had some good availability to seasonal stuff literally out my back door. I have the curtain pulled behind me, but if I opened it, you'd see my backyard. Working knowledge of standing and safety. It's certainly a concern in baking. It's a little bit more tricky in my meats and sauces class because they're handling raw chicken, but I am going to be watching those things and reinforcing those things. Basic terminology. We'll talk about that as we go. There are a lot of French terms that we will be using, and that's just really kind of, part of classical baking. One of the differences between me and some of the other instructors is, especially Kathy Burgett, who just retired, she was classically French trained and she worked in Paris under French chefs. I wasn't. My training, I was trained by an old Jewish guy from Brooklyn who grew up the hard way and owned bakeries all his life. And he worked for German Austrian pastry chefs. So that was kind of his approach, and that's what he passed on to all of us. So my friend Jeff, who I mentioned earlier, and I are both kind of that mold. We're more German Austrian in our approach as opposed to French. So just know that there's some subtle differences here and there, and you may hear me tell you something and explain it to you some way, and another chef will say, well, no, it needs to be done this way. And that's fine, because there are numerous approaches to some of these things that we're going to be doing. And I kind of point them out as we go along, or try to anyway. So the goal here is to have you demonstrate back to me that you've understood and can perform these basic skills, techniques, and guidelines. So that's kind of the goal here is I want to, we're going to talk about breads this week, and I'm going to give you 2 breads to do. Then you're going to go do those 2 breads, and then you're going to show them to me. And that's really pretty much exactly what we do in class. So I do have, this is the course outline here, and please note that it does say tentative. I think this goes through 7 weeks. I really didn't change it a whole lot, but I did take out week 8, which was the complex cakes. It is my intention to stick to this as much as possible. You're going to do this week these 2 things, a sourdough and a commercially yeasted bread. And then next week, you're going to do, actually, you're not going to do croissant, you're going to do Danish and puff pastry, those 2 things. I eliminated croissant because croissant and Danish are nearly identical, especially as far as the makeup and the lamination goes. So I wanted you to concentrate on Danish, and then we concentrate on the makeup of the Danish. And that's getting all the shapes and all the fillings and making them look right and figuring out our proof time. And it's a little bit more difficult than bread is, but not that much more. However, that's what we're going to do. Week 3, biscuits, scones, quick breads. And then week 4, pâte à choux. So somewhere in week 3 and week 4, I'm also going to slip cookies in there because I think you guys need to do some cookies. You're here at home. I've already made, let's see, last week I made oatmeal raisin, and then 2 days ago, my wife made peanut butter, and those are already gone. So I think you need some cookies. Everybody needs cookies. Pâte à choux, then we do pasta frolla, pâte sucrée. All of these are pastry doughs. So there's a sweet pastry dough, there's a savory pastry dough, there's one that freezes well, you know, there's one that you use when you're doing a pre-made filling. So we explain all these different doughs and we make some nice tarts. We'll be using fresh fruit. Hopefully I'll find some good fresh fruit that I'll be sending you guys. But you'll also be making lemon curd and frangipane, which are basic tart and pie fillings. Frangipane is an almond filling that you would make the tart, you put down a very thin layer of frangipane, and then you put some very ripe peaches on top of that, and you bake the whole thing. And it's just heaven. It's so good. Week 6 is a little bit more of that, except now we get into galettes and pies. I want to do a lattice demonstration for pies. Galettes are kind of like free-form pies where we don't need a pan for them. And then week 7, we'll do some cakes because I think you need to be exposed to that. So week 7, it says genoise, and that's not biscuit. It's pronounced biscuit. So yes, we have biscuits, and we'll be doing biscuits earlier in the class, but this particular word isn't biscuit. We say it with a French accent, and it's biscuit. And a biscuit is a foam type cake, very, very similar to a genoise. In fact, it's so similar that I'm not going to do biscuit. We're only going to do genoise. Genoise, like I said, the 2 are very, very similar. So rather than just duplicate them, you'll learn the technique by doing the genoise, and you handle them in exactly the same manner. It's just the biscuit is a little bit drier and a little bit less sweet, and it's used for slightly different things, but it's, you know, for this class, I want you to get the technique, and the technique is a folded foam cake, and a genoise covers that just perfectly. So, and then we'll get a little bit into icings and frostings, and I'm gonna have you guys at some point make a basic buttercream. A buttercream is a good thing to have. It's going to be a fun demo for me to shoot, because once you have refrigerated buttercream, to bring it back to use it more, it involves a torch. It involves a propane torch, and it's a little bit tricky to do. So that should be a good demo from Chef Jim. I hope I don't set my kitchen on fire, but okay, that'll be fine. Attendance. So this is a little weird because, you know, we're here, and I really appreciate everybody being here. And I think it's important that you be here for the lecture, because that's when I explain things. That's when you have an opportunity to ask questions if you didn't quite understand something. And we can have some interaction back and forth. Maybe you can share, oh, I tried this last night and it didn't really work. What do you think I was doing wrong? And then everybody can hear the response. So I think being in class like this is important for sharing ideas and for sharing the space, because we can't be there physically together. So I can require you to be here. The administration has already confirmed that we can require attendance, even though you didn't sign up for an online class. But I'm not going to do that. My biggest concern is that you understand the lessons and that you've replicated the technique. That's my biggest concern for this class right now. So if you can't be here for whatever reason, I think when you came into the room, there was an automatic voice that says that this meeting is being recorded. And what I do is after this is over, I get an email from Zoom and it's the recording, and I'm going to put that recording on our Canvas page. So if you've missed the class, I'm going to put that day's lecture in that module that we're working in. So later on today, this will be in our breads module. All right, care of the lab. Well, this is one of the great advantages to teaching online, is that I don't have to go behind you guys and make you clean the kitchen, because that's your own kitchen. So keep it clean. And I don't have to listen to somebody complain, Kate's not helping in the dish room. She's just bringing her stuff in and dropping it. So that's one of the great things, I think, for doing it this way. You know, of course, I kid, but we all know that that's what's going on sometimes. And then, you know, somebody is putting knives in the dish room and things like that. But anyway, so we don't have any of that. So you guys take care of your kitchen. I literally, when I figured out that this is what I was going to have to do, and this is almost 2 weeks ago, my wife and I, we spent the entire day, we broke my kitchen down and then kind of rebuilt it and moved stuff around and moved some stuff into the garage, because I knew I was going to be in here every day, almost 8 hours a day working. And this kitchen really isn't set up for it, although it is now. So you might look around your kitchen, think about your mise en place, think about how easy it is to access things. You might have, you know, some flexibility, but not a whole lot. The refrigerator is the other thing that is a point of contention. Not now, because we're only working with breads, but I'm telling you, when we get into pâte à choux and we're making pastry cream and we're doing all those things, you will be amazed at the amount of eggs and butter that we're going through. So when you go to pick up your stuff at school, it's going to be a lot of eggs and butter, and chances are there's going to be milk with it too. So try to reserve space in your refrigerator, keeping in mind that you're going to be getting that kind of stuff. Eggs, what I've decided to do is I'm leaving my eggs in my garage, because my garage is staying pretty cool. It's staying 50 degrees or so most of the time. So I'm just going to leave my eggs out there. I'm going to go through them fast enough that I don't think it's going to be a problem. Homework assignments. So I don't know if you've seen the first homework assignment, and it's up. And the homework assignments, they're the exact same homework assignments that we've always had, except I'm not giving you a paper copy to fill out and bring back to me that I have to grade. I've transferred all those questions now to Canvas. So you just go on to Canvas and it says take the quiz, but it's not really a quiz. You can take it as many times as you want to. You can change your answers. And it's, what was the other thing? Yeah, you can just go back and change it. There is a deadline for it. Oh, it's not timed. That's what it is. You can just take your time. There is a deadline, and if you miss the deadline, you can still do it. But when it comes to me, it has a great big red stamp on it. It says late. So it doesn't shut you off, but it does mark it as late. So that the homework assignments are all going to be like that. The great thing about it is I set them up so they're kind of self-grading. So you know immediately what your grade is on that. You also see that you've turned in all of your assignments, and they're all posted immediately. So there's no missing assignments. So it says 8 comprehensive. I don't know if there's going to be 8 yet. We'll see. Assignments are published. I actually have most of them written. I just haven't published them yet. I'll be opening them up week by week. Here it says note late work will be accepted. And I'm waiving that. I know there's a lot going on, and I think a couple of you are doing not just this class, but another class too. Don't I have a couple of you guys doing Garde Manger with Chef Christine? Yep. So notebook, there is no notebook requirement. However, I strongly suggest a notebook. Keeping everything electronically is, thank you, Kate. Keeping everything electronically is one thing, but having a physical notebook is something else. I still, you know, if we were at the Culinary Center, I would be showing you my notebooks from culinary school that are right now in my office, and I still refer to them. So I brought home, this is my textbook from culinary school, and I still have it. And inside my textbook, I have stuff that I've printed out. And if you go through this textbook, some of the pages are stuck together because they have chocolate mousse on them, and I have notes in the margins. So I'm just a huge believer in keeping a good notebook. And go ahead and write. If you have a textbook, write in that textbook. That's your textbook. If you have a physical printed copy of the baking reader, write in there. If you've made changes to that recipe during your production of that recipe, scratch something out and say, nope, this is what I did and this worked better. All of my notebooks are like that. And I'll tell you a little secret right now. The reader that we have for baking, some of those recipes are amazing. Some of those recipes don't work. So let me know before you do something out of that book. I tend to supplement my recipes with my own and not necessarily that reader. And I'll be sharing those things with you guys, of course, all the time. So competency assessments. Like I said, I will probably do everything except sugar work and complex cakes. These things I have decided to assess. So this week you're doing a commercially yeasted bread. Oops. And we're calling that French bread. It's what's known as a basic 4, which is it's flour, salt, yeast, and water. But we're calling this a commercially yeasted bread. A lot of your basic 4 breads are either Italian bread or French bread or some kind of a lean dough like that. So you'll do one of those and then one sourdough. And to be honest, it's not a true sourdough what we're making. What we're making is called a pre-ferment. And when we go over the recipe, I'll explain to you what the difference is. Brioche. I'll put up some instruction on how to make brioche. I think it's valuable to learn how to make brioche, but it's very, very difficult to do remotely. Brioche has just a ton of butter in it, and it is a very slack, sticky dough to work with. And we do it in the mixer, and there's always questions about, is it really supposed to look like that? And chances are, yeah, it is supposed to look like that. It's just brioche is a little bit tough, and you're going to get that in specialty anyway. So we won't do that. The Danish, yes, 4 uses of Danish. Start thinking now. Do you want to do bear claws? Do you have some old jam in the refrigerator that you've been dying to get rid of? You know, those kinds of things. Think about fillings for those things, because that's what I'm going to ask you to do, is make 4 different varieties of Danish, whether they're filled Danish or stars or bear claws. I'll give you a whole variety to choose from. And then we're going to do something similar with puff pastry. So I hope everybody has somebody to feed all this food to. I've been giving bread to my neighbors. They love me now. So because we can't eat it all. Because you're going to be making some fairly decent quantities of this stuff. So Danish dough, puff pastry, muffins, biscuits and scones, eclairs. Oh my gosh, who doesn't love eclairs? With eclairs, we're also going to, we're talking about profiteroles. We'll do gougères. A gougère is made from eclair paste, except that we add Gruyere cheese to it. So they're like little cheese puffs. And we use those for catering events all the time. We love those things. You can serve them as is, or you can fill them with tuna salad or smoked salmon or just minced cucumbers and mint. There's a million ways to do it. The tarts and pies, and I mean, who doesn't love pies? So we have some tart pans. And I know you guys are going to probably, some of you request tart pans. I inventoried them on Monday and we have 8. We have a lot of the rings. We don't have the bottoms. And that's a problem. So there is a technique where you can do it without the bottom. You just do parchment paper underneath it and you set the ring on your sheet pan and just, you don't move it. So I think what I might end up doing is, instead of sending you tart pans, I have a whole bunch of aluminum pie pans of various sizes. And we're just going to kind of follow the same techniques, except we're going to put them in pie pans instead of tart pans. And then we have the genoise and the chocolate cake. Those are going to be a little bit different. Those, you're going to have a 9 or a 10-inch straight-sided cake pan. And I think we have plenty of those. So when it gets to that, you guys let me know if you're going to need those. And for that delivery, I'll send some pans along the way. I think we have plenty of those. And then one angel food or chiffon cake. I haven't inventoried the angel food pans yet, tube pans. But look around if you have one of those. And don't need one, let me know, or either way. So we will be doing that. That's going to be at the end of class. So while I'm thinking about it and I'm looking at these, you guys are also getting some supplies, and among those supplies are parchment paper. And I just want to caution you to really think about how you're using that parchment paper. And not to waste the parchment paper, because if you instead of cutting a piece to fit, if you just fold it over, now you're wasting half the paper. And then when you need it, you're like, oh, I'm out of parchment paper. Now what do I do? So hold on to that parchment paper like gold. If you run out too quickly, let me know. I'll put more in the next box that I send. But just let me know how you're doing with the parchment paper. All right. I think that was it for that. All right. So I have here discussions, and I've started some discussions here, and I encourage you to interact with these discussions. I thought it was a good idea to have something like this since we're not all in class. Usually we'll take a break and they'll send up food from downstairs and we'll all sit around and we'll talk about what's going on, what's happening in our lives. And oh, I tried doing this yesterday. So hopefully this could be a nice place to do that. And this is also where I put my, my Pizza with Conrad video. So pizza is not one of those things that is assessed, but pizza is one of those things that if you're in class, it's what we do. You know, it doesn't take the entire class to do these breads, so I try to show you some variation, and pizza is one of those things, and we have a day when we do a lot of pizza. So if you have a way to do pizza, I encourage you to do it. It's a lot of fun. I always make pizza dough and keep it in the freezer. So if I don't know what to have for dinner that night, I pull pizza dough out, and pizza dough will thaw in a few hours. It'll thaw enough to open it and to have good pizza. So watch the pizza dough demo with Conrad, and that's a lot of fun. You get to see where he lives in Hawaii, and he's making pizza in his sandals. I'm gonna have to talk to him about that, but okay, that's something different. Anyway, so we have discussions, announcements, and then these are our modules. So right now we're in breads. So if you go to sourdough, and it's worth 10 points. And what I have here in breads is I've broken everything down into steps, and I've tried to keep all the videos under 10 minutes. So there's a video on mixing, there's a video on shaping, there's a video on proofing and baking. So I've tried to break everything down into these cohesive steps so you can see them broken down like that. So you don't have to watch a 45-minute video and then try to go back and, oh, I need to see where he did this thing again. So I've tried to do it, like I said, in pieces. And then I also, and this is for the, again, for the sour, to take a lot of still pictures. Like this is the pouliche that I made that is just flour, yeast, and water. And this sits for 24 hours. And then the next day, you're gonna add 5 ounces of flour to it, stir it up, and then that's what it looks like. It doesn't look wet anymore. Now it's a lot drier. But this is what it looked like 24 hours later. It really did come up. So I have pictures that go along with all of this. I talk about the fact that these are called bannetons or baskets, and chances are you guys don't have them, but you do have what's underneath here more than likely, and those are both just colanders. And so they're not going to go into the oven, it's just for proofing. I took a colander and then I took a tea towel, a clean tea towel, and that's what I'm using in place of a banneton. And it worked really well, except that I didn't put enough flour in it. But the bread, see, there's the bread. And the bread came out, it looks a little rough, but man, was it delicious. You can't believe it, how good this bread was. And there's the inside of it right there. And that's what we want. So for you, let me show you real quick. See, I'll go into student view here, so I'll show you exactly what you guys are seeing. All right, so you'll go into sourdough, you watch the videos, you see the pictures, you have the recipe in front of you, you're, all right, so I'm ready to attempt, or you've done it. So once you've done it, you're gonna submit your assignment. And that's going to allow you to upload a file or insert a link to a YouTube video. Don't try to upload the YouTube video directly into Canvas or the video from your phone. Upload to YouTube first and then put the link in Canvas. It's much easier and there's no upload time. It's instantaneous. So upload to YouTube and link into Canvas. So, and you're going to grade yourself, right? We talked about that self-assessment. So you're going to ask yourself all these questions. What bread did you make? You're going to explain it. Did you make your own starter? Well, you followed the recipe. Was it a straight dough or a sponge? How was the crumb? How did it taste? I want you guys to tell me, how was it? Was it good? Was it delicious? Was it, it was gummy. I didn't leave it in long enough. Oh, I forgot about it. It got burnt. And then give yourself a score. So it's 10 to 8 for excellent, you know. So I'm going to put this rubric at the bottom of your assessments so that you know, all right, it didn't really come out that great. So I'm going to give myself a 6. So be honest, and I'm going to be looking at the pictures as well. And let me tell you, I'll share a secret with you. I don't expect to see any 10s, not unless you've been in the business for a while, because a 10 means there's no improvement to be made. So we're all in intro to baking, and it's okay to have less than perfect, because less than perfect tells you, okay, well, this is what I need to do next time. And when you watch my videos, you'll see my breads are less than perfect. Right now, I would rank those breads that I did for your videos right in here. They look a little rough, but man, were they delicious. And not all of them would I have attempted to sell. Some of them would have gone in the bin, or we would have shared them for family meal, but I wouldn't have put all that bread out for sale for the public. But it was delicious. So be honest and self-assess. So all of your assessments are going to go like that. Let's see. So we have that one, and then we have the commercial, right? So this is the same thing. This is what we're calling French bread. And this is a good video, and the Pain Levant is good because even though I started them in a mixer, I finished them by hand. And if you don't have a mixer, or your mixer is not quite big enough, both of these doughs can really easily be transferred to just putting everything in a big bowl. You start in a big bowl, you bring the dough till it starts to come together, and then you turn it out onto the table just like I did. I do that in this French bread mixing part 2. That's what I do. I take it out of the mixer and I continue to work it on the table until I get it kneaded to where I want it. So even if you don't have a mixer, or your mixer's too small, or you don't like your mixer, or your mixer started smoking because it's pulling bread doughs, these can be done by hand. And yes, I have had a mixer start smoking because of our home mixers. They don't like bread, unfortunately. That's just, but anyway. Okay. So those are your 2 assessments for this week, a sourdough and commercial. Now down here, I have egg bread, and you see I have 0 points on here. So if we go here, I set this up like an assessment, but this bread isn't assessed, but I encourage you to make it. And because it's, I mean, look at it. It's really a delicious bread. If we were in class at school, we'd be doing this bread. Because I show you, I take a couple hours to show you how to handle an egg bread and how to do these braids. So this is a very forgiving dough, and it's very delicious, and it has better keeping quality than the French bread does, or even the Pain Levant. This bread will stay reasonably fresh and edible for about 3 days. The French bread, it's about 6 hours before it starts to get stale. It goes stale very quickly. So this bread has some good keeping abilities, and it's delicious and it's fun to make. That's the inside of it. I mean, look at that crumb. It's really nice. So this can be done free form like this, or this is a cast iron pan that I have. It can be done either way. So if you don't have a loaf pan, don't worry about it. Do a braid like that and you'll be golden. All right. So there's that. I encourage you to do that. I have the recipes here. What this is, I've done the screenshot from your reader. So rather than looking through your reader, oh, what page is that recipe on in the reader? I'm going to try to every time also post the individual recipes in the modules that we're working so that you know exactly which recipe I want you to use. If I had just told you, oh, go to the reader and make pizza dough, you're going to go in there and you're going to realize, oh, well, there's 2 recipes for pizza dough in here. Which one do I use? And actually, the best one is pizza dough number 2. But if I just cut it and paste it and put it, and I said, this is the one, I think there's less confusion. So I'm going to try to do that every time. So when you see that in a module, that's what it is. So I have the egg bread recipe here, French bread. These have the videos, and then that's pizza with Conrad. And I did just mention that pizza dough that he is using is pizza dough number 2 out of our reader. That's not my personal favorite pizza recipe, but that's one of his personal favorite recipes. I have 2 that I use, and one of them is Julia Child recipe. And it's a sponge for pizza dough. But anyway, so, and then next week, we are going to do viennoiseries. And viennoiserie, it really just refers to all of these pastries that we typically think of as breakfast pastries. It includes laminated doughs and brioche. So that's the category. And there are some pastry chefs, that's what they specialize in, are these laminated doughs. And I love doing laminated doughs. Have already started mine, and I'm going to be doing my encasement right after this class. So next week when you see my video and I show how to put the butter in, it's called encasement. That's what I'm doing just right after this class. So I hope to have that up by the end of the week. So that's where we are now. There are things in these other sections. I just haven't published them yet. I'm concentrating on what we have in front of us and what we're going to be doing next week. So next week you will be doing the Danish. Here's the recipe for the Danish. You're going to be doing pastry cream, and you're going to start doing fillings, pastry cream and lemon curd, both of those things as well. So find your friends, because you're going to make a lot of pastry cream. All right. Questions about Canvas? Anybody? All right. Very good. Do we need a break, a quick break? Kate, yes? You need to unmute, Kate.
So, you know me fairly well. So the question is, so we're not recording our actions. We're reporting our actions.
You're documenting them, and I want you to, as much as possible, take pictures and video if you can.
Okay.
And with your phone is fine.
Okay. I just don't, can somebody tell me how to video me while I'm like working? I mean, like, do I try and prop my phone up? Is that what you would do? Or?
Here's what I use.
Okay, that's what I wondered.
So I was looking around my garage. I wanted to get one of those little tripods. I have a tripod for my camera, but it doesn't hold my cell phone. So I was trying to figure all that out. And
Right.
I have a picture somewhere of, I have this thing, and I kind of have it wedged into a ladder I have, and that's sitting on top of another box, and it's kind of leaned over like this. Those videos that you see that I have up already of me doing table work, that's how I set.
So you can't take your laptop, like I was wondering, can I put my laptop on top of my refrigerator and point it down and tell it to record?
Yeah, you could do that. You could do that.
You know, tell it
or Kate, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be a video.
Okay.
You can take pictures.
All right, so I'll run over, take a picture, put myself in it. Okay.
Yep.
I'll figure something out, but that's what my concern was. I thought, okay, how do I show the completed process, or, you know, step by step?
Right.
I guess I just go through and here's step 1, da 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 da. Here's
Yeah.
step 2. Da-da-da-da-da.
That's
Yeah.
kind, and that's kind of what I'm doing because I'm shooting video and stills for everything
Yeah.
that I'm doing.
Okay.
And I'll stop after a certain process and take a picture. This is what it looks like after this
Okay.
process.
Right. And it's okay. Yeah. All right. I'll figure that part out. I'm going to have what do you do? I'm going to ask a friend to like
Yep,
come and
there you go.
videotape me. And then I promise to give them the pastry or the bread. How's
Yeah,
that
see,
sound?
that's a good incentive. Come
Yeah.
videotape me and I'll
I'll
give
give
you
you
fresh hot
food.
pastries.
Yes. And
All
they
right.
have to stay 6 feet away anyway, so it doesn't matter, right?
True. All right. So,
Oh, and then what about with our frangipan? We need the almonds. So do we just try and get almonds or?
I'm
For now.
going to be, again, going through the recipes and, yeah, because I didn't send you guys any almonds this week, did I?
No.
No. I'll send you those next week so that
Okay.
by Wednesday afternoon, you'll have those things so that you can do those assignments.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I looked because if it's frangipan, I mean, I don't mind. I have some walnuts, but you got to blend them with something. I got to have the almonds to get a little walnut to get a little pecan or whatever.
I want to, it's my intention to send you guys all the
Okay.
ingredients that you need.
Okay. That's what I looked at that and thought,
The one thing that I am struggling with that we're still trying to figure out right now is vanilla. Vanilla is a little tricky. Vanilla is super expensive.
I know, but tell us you'll give us an extra credit point if we go get our own vanilla. How's that?
But I don't want you paying for your own vanilla. Okay. All right.
Hey, if it's worth it, if I get through this, hey, this is, via the hip, this is my last role in intro. Been here, done this.
All right.
All right.
There it goes. All right. So, this class goes through today. Happy April Fool's Day, everybody. Anyway.
It's no joke. No joke.
And through the May the 15th, the question has been asked of me, do we have to meet? Are we meeting by Zoom every class? No, we meet by Zoom on Wednesdays.
Right.
And then we go through everything and, most of the time in Intro to Baking is spent baking. Most of that time is in the lab. So my lectures are going to be really about the same. I have videotaped all of my demos that I usually do either in the lab or in the kitchen. All those demos are separate videos so that we don't have to spend a lot of time. You can look at them when you're ready to do that thing. And the videos, so the videos are already there. It's a beautiful thing. The Intro to Baking reader is on Canvas. And you can either download it and print the recipes. I like to have a physical copy of the recipe in front of me when I'm working. So I'm not going back and forth to my computer and I might have butter all over my fingers and the computer's not on the right screen, whatever. So I like to print it out and work, and that way I can also make notations on my written recipe, my printed recipe. So Intro to Baking reader. That is a requirement for this class, but it's in there. I've already provided it to you. And then I have this book, and this is the updated version of the book that I used in school. I highly recommend to get a professional book like that. They're a little bit more thorough. I use this book a lot in class because this book has a lot of pictures, especially when we're going to do makeup next week and you're going to do star shapes and you're going to do all kinds of these different shapes that we do with the Danish. And that book has good illustrations in it. So having a good text like that is, I think, valuable. Again, that one's Professional Baking, and the author's name is Wayne Gislin. Wayne's been around for a while.
Wayne who?
Gislin, G-I-S-S-L-E-N. All right, so this kind of stuff is already in my syllabus, but just it's there. So down at the bottom here, you see I was talking about frangipan earlier. There you go. That's a frangipane pear tart right there. The frangipane rises up and kind of surrounds the pears, and oh, it's delicious. So this is an apple galette, and that's an opera cake. An opera cake only has about 40 steps to it. You don't ever want to make those. They're delicious, but man, they're complicated. So I left this slide in here. Scholarship season is ending, and we're actually awarding scholarships now for the fall semester. But there are a lot of scholarships that are year round. And right now, there's a zillion scholarships, not only through culinary, but there's just a lot of people giving away money. And for you guys, it's a windfall, and it's easy. If all you have to do, you fill out one application, just one. You write one essay, you put all your information in there, you hit submit, and the system that we have will link you to every scholarship that you are eligible for. And you can submit for multiple scholarships all at once. And I know in culinary, we've been doing these scholarships for a very long time, and we have so many scholarships that we almost always have more scholarships than applicants. So what happens is some applicants get 2 scholarships because we want to award all the money. We try to divvy it up evenly, but there's always something for somebody. So this is worth your time to spend some time in. It's maybe takes you an hour or so, and it brings you money. So that thing I think is valuable. I also left this one in here, the Writing Center, because the Writing Center is open, and they are open virtually. You can contact the Writing Center and they can Zoom with you, or they can help you email back and forth, but they are open. All these support services on campus, and I was just reading about all this morning, they remain open. So if you need help with something from the Writing Center or the Tutorial Center even, they're open. So you can call them or you can email them if you want to. DRD is also open. And DRD, those people are bending over backwards. DRD is the Disability Resources Department. So all these places are still open. By the way, this PowerPoint, I'm going to save it as a PDF, and I'll post this also separately, the PowerPoint separately. So if there's something on here that you want to go back and look at, I'm going to post this afternoon in our first module. So the things that we need to look out for as we're baking: sanitation and safety, of course, we need to be safe. We always want to do local and seasonal as much as possible. I will use some things, you'll see me use some things out of season, but almost every time it's because I did the preservation myself. I made my wife made gnocchis, and we used a tomato sauce the other day for dinner, but they were tomatoes that I had canned last year that I grew in my garden. So I have some stuff preserved, and we like to preserve things. So right this time of year, you're a little bit limited on the things that you can get. So if you're using some frozen fruit, I think that's okay. And then the basic professional terminology. We'll always talk about terminology, and I'll try my best to correctly pronounce things. Although being the proud Southerner that I am, my French accent is lacking, to say the least. So I will try, but please don't mock me too much. So as the in-person class, I will give you the recipe. I'll talk about the technique. I'll try to warn you of the pitfalls of the technique. I'll try to give you any tips, things like puff pastry, everything. You want everything to be very, very cold. Even your countertop that you're working on, you want it to be cold. If that countertop, the sun's been shining through the window and it heated up your countertop, wait till a different time to do puff pastry. because having a hot countertop is not going to be your friend. So I'll give you some basic guidelines for each demo and then show you the demo, and then it's your turn to go do it. So we'll work on craftsmanship. A lot of times, especially baking a pastry, when you get into the high-end pastry arts, they call it an art form, and in many ways it is. However, I consider myself a boulanger rather than a pastry chef. And a boulanger is in French, that's the master of the oven. And that person is a production baker. And they do, a good example is, I'll make the wedding cake layers and the buttercream and the marzipan, and somebody else, the pastry chef, puts it all together and does the little artistic parts to it. So there is a difference, and I kind of consider myself more of a boulanger than an actual pastry chef. Breads, I'm great at breads. I'm great at laminated doughs. I'm not so hot at individual plated desserts. That's just not my forte. So craftsmanship, I will always try to show you best practice when we're doing these techniques, so you can work on your craftsmanship. And craftsmanship, you know, that's one of those things I'm convinced you don't need a lot of talent. You just need practice, good instruction, train your hands, do it over and over again, know what the end product is supposed to look like, and you can teach yourself to do these things and get better over time. Curiosity. Oh, what would happen if I substituted half of the flour with almond flour? You know, these things. Oh, can I take out half the bread flour and use whole wheat flour? What's that going to do to my bread? You can do these things. Be curious about these things. However, I will warn you, it's a pitfall that students fall into sometimes. Sometimes you'll get too curious, and I want you to master the basic technique first. Once the basic technique, you've got it down pat, you understand it, you know, oh, my oven was too low, you can troubleshoot yourself really well. That's when you can start really playing around with these things. Oh, what happens when I do this? You know, almond flour, it probably make it taste really good, but almond flour has no gluten. So it doesn't provide any structure. So you have to deal with that. So it's all about understanding your ingredients, being curious, what happens if I do this, taking notes, and pushing things. So hard work is fun if you love what you're doing. You know, it's kind of cliche. You hear that a lot. Oh, you'll never work a day in your life if you love your job. Trust me, I love making bread, but when you make 300 loaves of bread every day, day in, day out, it's hard to love that sometimes. You know, you come home and you've got flour everywhere and up your nose, and it's just, and sometimes you just want to stop. But this is what we love to do. And if you work in a bakery that has a good variety, you can work at all the different stations, or you can be the baker for a restaurant, which means you're doing much smaller quantities and you're doing a nice, good variety. All right. I love that picture. So good baking informs better cooking.
Yeah.
All of these things. Sometimes students will ask me, Chef Jim, I'm not going to be a baker. I want to be a chef, an executive chef at a restaurant. So why do I have to take baking? All of these things. Baking really is kind of a different mindset. It takes patience, and it takes kind of a deeper understanding of your ingredients than is typically found on the savory side. Our deadlines are different in the baking world. I can't turn up the heat to make the bread go faster. The bread will not like that. The bread will push back, and the bread will say, no, that's not going to happen, and here's why. So we have to schedule ourselves a little bit different. Our timing is a little different. In the bake shop, we are always, always, always a day ahead. Sometimes in the restaurant, I can arrive in the morning and get ready by lunch. But in the bake shop, if you are working for that day, you are seriously in the weeds and you need to take another look at things. So baking helps with your time management. It helps with your understanding of ingredients. It helps with, I think, some of your patience in getting things done. And there's just something very, very therapeutic, I think, for me anyway, of doing exactly what you see on this screen. You have a nice dough. It's a live thing underneath your hands, and you're creating something delicious and beautiful at the same time. So I don't know if it sounds like I love baking. I do, especially bread. All right. So course goals. Mistakes are okay. I want to see your mistakes. I'm going to show you my mistakes. I've already shown you some of them. I want to see your mistakes too, because I can look at them and say, this pat a choux up here, oh, what happened, chef? You got way too much egg in that. It's just all soggy. Didn't work right. So your egg is wrong. But I followed the recipe, chef. Guess what? The recipe's wrong. You need to adjust it. If you follow the recipe word for word and it still came out like that, then the recipe's wrong and you need to adjust it. So mistakes are okay. Teamwork is important. In class, it certainly is. I left this one in here because I still think it's important. Working in a commercial situation is always a teamwork thing. And that's why I put in the little chat rooms and everything else in Canvas so that we have some way to communicate and some way to at least interact a little bit. Self-critique is positive. Be hard on yourself. Ask yourself, number one, is this the best I can do? But I always ask myself, regardless of how it comes out, what can I do next time to make it better? Yes, this is really good and it looks great. However, it has this and it has that. Always find something that you can assess and improve on next time. And those are the things that I want to hear. All professionals have high standards. I want you to have high standards as well. Look at it. Does it look like something that you would go to Cousteau's or even Safeway or even Costco? Does it look like something that you would buy there? Or does it look like something that somebody else who's never baked before made? You know, be honest, but have high standards. Chef Kathy used to have something that she would always call, is it WTC? Is it worth the calories? You're going to add lots of calories. You're going to gain some weight, but is this really delicious? We want it to be delicious and we want it to look good. So have high standards and don't take the path of least resistance. Oh, I know you want me to fill this, so I'm going to put a spoonful of grape jelly in it. Okay, there it is. It's filled. You know, do a little bit more than that. Don't take the path of least resistance. Don't do like my 6th grade science teacher used to say, this is bare minimum. Yes, you did the assignment, but it's bare minimum. You just barely even did it. So have some pride in your work and don't take the path of least resistance. So safety and sanity, we'll be going through this. Like I said, I'm going to be paying attention to that. The schedule a little bit and how this schedule is going to be changed. All right. So again, these are your assignments. So when you upload, you don't have one yet, but in my meats and sauces class, I have a list of terms that they have to define. So what they do is they go on Canvas and they do a copy, and then they open a Word document and they paste it into that, and then they answer the questions. And then they submit it either as a Word document or a PDF file or an RTF. So this is the point in the conversation where I'm telling you, do not send me things through Google Docs. Please, please, please don't send me things through Google Docs. Google Docs, there's all kinds of weird permissions and stuff, and I always have problems with students who try to send things through Google Docs. So I have the ability through Canvas, I limit the file types, and I have limited the file type submission to these 3 things. Actually, there's one more, and it's docx. It's docx, RTF, and PDF. RTF is like WordPerfect or one of the old word processing platforms, but every computer in the world has RTF capabilities. So you'll return electronically via the link. It's due by the following Wednesday. And the last assignment is due Friday of the last class. And the class will be closed at midnight that night. So have everything in, because if you're late turning in that last assignment, there won't be anything there for you to turn it into. It'll be closed and all the links will be gone. So stay on top of that, please. Handouts, the handouts won't be handouts, but I'll be posting them in each section. This is how you will score yourself. And again, I repeated all this is all in Canvas where your assignments are. So, you know, if it's unacceptable, you burnt it, or it fell on the floor, or it fell, it's overproofed, you know, it's 4 points. If it's amazing, it's 10. So hopefully we have some measuring cups. I did a little video on measuring cups and measuring devices. If you don't have a good scale, you can do volume equivalents. And I'm looking for a good chart to put up, and I'll put it up hopefully today. So a pound of flour is this many cups of flour, because water weighs 8 ounces a cup, but flour weighs 5 ounces a cup. So there's not a direct link between volume and weight.
Right.
So I give you this. This is a nice little chart. These are things, though, that you should have learned in survey, or at least covered them in survey. And I'm going to be sending you some worksheets to reinforce these measurements, because these measurements are part of your homework, and I haven't figured out how to put that on Canvas yet. So you will get some charts or some exercises to reinforce all these measurements.
Nice.
See, like this, where you fill in 1 pint is 2 cups, 2 pints is, how many quarts is 2 pints? How many quarts? 1, right? Yes, 1. Thank you. Thank you. So there'll be a quiz later.
Yeah, there is a quiz.
Yeah. So this is basically what we're doing. We would do in class if we were here all week. And you guys are going to do really everything except maybe the pizza. And I would encourage you to get to the pizza because it's very good. So here at the bottom, we have another picture of a delicious frangipane tart. All right, so we're starting intro to baking with the most basic of baked goods, which is bread. And bread, we're doing a 4 ingredient bread, but you can really do bread with just 2 ingredients. You can do bread with flour and water. And you can take that flour and water and you make a paste and you let it sit out on your counter for 72 hours. And then you feed it, you put a little bit more water in it, you feed it by adding more flour to it. And then you let it sit for another 72 hours. And by that time, it's already captured wild yeast and it's going to be bubbling. So you can literally start with just those 2 ingredients and bake. We're going to be using commercial yeast because it works well. It's dependable. Wild yeasts are not that dependable. Wild yeasts typically have a better flavor though. But we'll talk about sours in a different class. So when we're talking about yeast doughs and whether that is a Danish dough or a sourdough bread or a French bread, these are the 12 steps. So when I do videos, I try to break down all my videos into these steps. Now, I may combine some of these steps. I don't do a video on scaling. I'll have everything already scaled out and ready to go into the mixer. So we have scaling, mixing, fermentation, punching, scaling again, rounding, resting, shaping, proofing, baking, cooling, and storage. So those are the 12 steps of yeast dough production. You might see that again in a quiz. So scaling, the first scaling that's when we measure everything out. We go through the recipe, this is what we have, and please, please, please read the entire recipe, not just the stuff at the top, not just the ingredient list, but the method as well. Because when we get into Danish, it calls for a pound of butter. That pound of butter doesn't go in the dough when you make the dough initially. The pound of butter is what we call the roll in. It goes in later. So look at the recipe very carefully, read it, and then start your mise en place by doing your scaling. So first we scale and then we mix. So this week we're going to be doing 2 mixing methods. We do what's called a direct method, which is really, you just literally will dump everything into the mixer. And then we do an indirect method, and an indirect method is a sponge, and that's the pain levant. So we make the sponge one day, and then we feed it one day, and then we make the dough on the 3rd day. So it takes a while, it takes a little planning to do an indirect dough or a sponge dough. Then we have, after it's mixed, then there's fermentation. So if you're lucky and you have multiple bowls for your mixer, I would just leave the dough in the bowl that it was mixed in and let it ferment all together in one big dough. That's how it ferments the best. However, not everybody's going to have a mixer with multiple bowls. So always turn it out and put it in another bowl. But make sure it's a bowl that's big enough that when it doubles or triples in size, it's not spilling out of the bowl. So make sure you have a good deep bowl. By the way, when you're doing breads, you don't have to wash your mixing bowl between bread doughs. We don't do it at school. We don't do it in the production bakery. If we're doing various bread doughs throughout the day in the mixer, I don't wash the mixer bowl between bread doughs. If I was going to stop and do buttercream, yes, but if I'm going to just do bread doughs, I don't wash the bowl between. So fermentation is done immediately after mixing. We try to do it in one mass. And to get really, really good bread, you need a long fermentation time. That's really when the flavor is developed. That's why you'll see at school, especially when we go into the production baking class, all those doughs are made in advance. They're put in bus tubs and they're allowed to sit in the refrigerator to ferment until we need them. So that way, all those breads have really good flavor when we bring them out and make them up. So the longer you can extend that fermentation time, the better. But that's going to depend a lot on temperature. How hot is it in your kitchen? We don't have proof boxes, and you don't do fermentation anyway in a proof box. That comes later on. But if your kitchen is really hot, your fermentation is going to be quick. And you can slow that down by putting ice in your water when you make your bread, or you have to be sure to use very, very cold water when you make your bread. That will slow down your fermentation. So these are things that we learn as we practice as we go along. So after it ferments, it comes up, then we punch it. We push it. It's not really literally a punch, but it's more of a push. We push the gas down, and I'll shoot a short video of that. And then we fold the sides over to the middle. It's called a star fold. And then we turn the whole dough upside down, and we let it come back up again. So punching punches out all the gas, it redistributes the yeast and the temperature so that it ferments evenly. So after it's done that, you've punched it, you let it sit for about another 30 minutes to rest, then you bring it to the table. Now is when you're going to put it into your portions. So if you're doing French bread or baguettes, that's a 12-ounce portion. So you'll cut a piece and you'll weigh it on your scale and you set it aside and you go and you do all your 12-ounce pieces. If you're doing like a dinner roll or something like that, that's a 3 or 4 ounce. So this is where we are second scaling, but we're scaling up the dough into the portion size. After we scale it, then you make it into rounds. You have to make it round. If you don't make it round, you have this kind of lopsided amoeba looking half square piece of dough. If you try to stretch that out into a nice uniform baguette, it doesn't stretch right. So we need to make them round, all of them, regardless of what the end shape is going to be. So we make them round. After we've done that, the gluten has been reactivated again and the dough gets tight. So we have what's called a bench rest. And depending on what kind of dough you have, that bench rest can be anywhere from 20 minutes to 2 hours. So just be patient with it. If you're rolling it out and the bread is stretching back like a rubber band, then you didn't bench rest it long enough. And it needs to go a little bit longer. So after the bench rest, then that's when we put it in its final shape. We stretch it out, we braid it, we make it into little rounds because we're doing dinner rolls, whatever it is, we have the shaping. So we shape it into its final form. And at that point, we'll put it on a sheet pan and put it in the proof box for proofing. So we don't have a proof box. I don't think anybody does at home. I certainly don't. So I've just been putting the bread in different places around my kitchen. Always be sure to cover it lightly. Don't plastic wrap it down because it won't have any way to rise. You'll keep it down. So cover it very lightly. A tea towel also works. And it can go on top of the fridge. It can go really just about anywhere. And it doesn't necessarily even have to be a very warm spot. It just needs to be a place out of the way where nobody's going to disturb it. And if it's not a warm corner, it's just going to take a little bit longer. But that's okay because it's going to be delicious. And then so after we proof it, then it's baked. One of the things you're going to run into is you're not going to be sure, oh, is this fully proofed or not? I try to give you some hints to look for when you're trying to decide if it's proofed long enough. Basically, if you're touching the bread lightly with your finger and you're still feeling a pretty good amount of resistance and the bread is springing right back to its original shape and you're not leaving a fingerprint in that dough, it is not ready. So we want to take it when it's about what's called a 75 or an 80% proof, which means that when you touch it with your finger, it's going to come back slowly, almost all the way back out, but not quite. It's still going to leave a little impression. If you poke that bread and your finger goes into it very, very easily and it doesn't push back at all, you're already overproofed and you need to get it in the oven as soon as possible. If it proofs too long, even I've seen it proof so long that even just lifting the pan kind of interrupts it enough and all the gas falls out of it and it just collapses. And then you have pita bread that's like shoe leather. So watch your proofing. So once you're convinced that your proofing is good, that's when you're going to do any washing. And by washing, I mean you're going to do an egg wash if the recipe calls for an egg wash and the egg bread does. And that's when you're going to do any slashing. So for our French bread, your proofing is done, you're happy, you're ready to go in, your oven is hot, and that's when you'll do your slashes or your relief cuts. Those slashes, they're very decorative, but what they also do is they contribute to the crust expansion and then the oven, what we call oven spring. And the oven spring is that initial rise when it hits the hot air inside the oven. So slashing the bread allows for more volume and for more oven spring. It's not just pretty. So then we have cooling. So it's baked and it needs to cool. You don't want it to be in an area where it's going to hold any moisture in. So it doesn't need to, you don't want it to be in an enclosed area. When we're at school, we put them on racks, big speed racks. You want good air circulation all the way around it. And if you have like a rack that you cool cakes on, like a wire rack, those are great as well. Those are perfect for cooling bread. Storing. So as a rule of thumb, everything has to be cool. And I mean, you're not feeling any warmth at all. So if you bag up bread that's still even a little bit warm, that bread will sweat. And you'll get moisture droplets that build up on the inside, and it ruins the crust, and it makes the whole thing kind of gummy. So it has to be fully cooled. We don't like to put bread in airtight bags. We like to put bread in bags that can breathe a little bit. That's why you buy bread at the grocery store that it's in paper bags. It's helping to keep some of the moisture in, but it still allows some back and forth. All right. All right, so this is your recipe. This is one of the recipes that you're doing. So here's how I recommend that you do this. The pouliche, and that's your pre-ferment. It's 10 ounces of bread flour, 10 ounces of water, and a half a teaspoon of instant yeast. So the little packages that you can buy at the grocery store, do you guys know how much those are? How much is in them? It's like
The small packet,
yeah.
two and a half.
I'm trying to remember how much it was. It's a quarter ounce, I think, something like that,
Comes
which is a tablespoon.
it comes as a one packet, 1/4 ounce, approximately 2 and a quarter teaspoon.
2 1/4 teaspoons. Okay. So this is a half a teaspoon. So it's a very small amount. It's not even one full packet like that. But you guys, hopefully you got instant yeast today. So it's a half a teaspoon of instant yeast, and you just combine that, stir it up, and then cover it and just set it somewhere. I did this in the morning, and then in the evening, I just wrapped it up and I put it in the refrigerator. The next morning, I brought it out, and that's when I added this 5 ounces of bread flour. So this pouliche, that's this. So you make this one day, and then it says 1 pound, 2 ounces. And guess what? This makes 1 pound, 2 ounces. All right. So you're going to use the whole thing. And then you're going to add 5 ounces of flour to that, bread flour, and stir it up. And again, let it sit. Let it sit all day. I let mine sit literally 8-9 hours and then put it in the refrigerator. And then it was the third day that I brought it out. And now I took my pouliche to make my levain. And so I take my levain, which is my pouliche plus my bread flour. I take more bread flour, water, and a little bit of salt. I'm not adding any more yeast because we've already propagated the yeast. And then we put all of that in the mixer. And I have a video on that, and I'll show you. I start it in the mixer, and then I bring it out and I finish it on the table because that dough is a little bit big for your mixer. So, and then that dough, I made that dough in the morning, and I let that dough rise for about 6 or 7 hours. So at this point, it's day 3. So this recipe, can you shorten the time? Yes, but you really will lose a lot of good flavor. This is something that in the restaurant or in a professional bake shop, you're always 3 days ahead. Every day you're making more pouliche. Every day you're making more Levant. Every day you're taking the 3-day-old mix. So you're staggered. You're always have a batch going, and it's at some stage. So you're in continuous production of these things. So you don't want to shortcut this, because if you shortcut it, the texture isn't right and the flavor isn't very good. All right, so that's one. Now here's your French bread, your basic dough. Do a half recipe. If you try to put 3 pounds, 12 ounces of flour in your KitchenAid mixer like I have, that mixer is going to complain loudly, and it may not pull it. So cut this recipe in half. And you don't need to make that much bread anyway. Man, that's a lot of bread. So if it's just yourself or 2 of you, you'll never eat that much bread. So cut this recipe in half. And then this recipe is you just literally, you dump everything in, you mix it, you ferment it, you make it up, and then it takes about start to finish, if you do it right and you're patient, about 8 hours. But you can do it all in one day. You make the dough in the morning, and then you put it to the side, and then you go do something else. And then you come back and you punch it and you do something else. And then you come back and you make it up and you let it proof and you go do something else. So you're back and forth a lot. So I just want to mention, I mean, there's lots of little tips that I'm always thinking about that I pass on when I'm in class. But this thing about temperatures is really very true, especially with bread. Bread is very, very temperature sensitive. Ideally, you want to take bread out of the mixer at about 78 or 80 degrees, no warmer. If your bread is coming out of the mixer because your water is too warm or your flour was in the sun or something like that, you're going to get runaway fermentation, and you're not going to get good flavor, and it's not going to do what you want it to. So watch your temperatures. Don't let the salt come in contact with the yeast. So if you're measuring things out, and I mentioned this in one of the videos, and you're low on little individual cups, don't put your salt and your yeast in the same cup. Salt inhibits yeast growth, and it slows it way down. And in some cases, it'll kill about half your yeast. So keep those 2 things apart. And a quick note on salt. You guys got a big thing of salt, and they sent you kosher salt. And kosher salt is fine for what we're doing, but that's a chef thing. I don't bake bread with kosher salt. I prefer sea salt in my bread. But again, that's a chef preference thing, and there's nothing wrong with using kosher salt, but just be aware that not every chef will recommend kosher salt for bread. All right. So enjoy the bake. And what I mean by that is this is the end of the lecture part. So I want to take a couple minutes just to make sure that everybody knows what they're going to be doing. Let me see, there we are. Everybody kind of understands where they can find everything. You don't have questions about how to assess and how to upload things. Let me know if you have any questions right now. So your deadline is not tonight. Your deadline is next week for all these things. And especially with bread, take your time. Let the bread do its thing. Again, I think I've said it several times. Bread likes to be left alone, and bread likes to kind of go at a slow pace. So in class, it's unfortunate that we have a time limit in class. And sometimes I'm saying, no, go ahead and put it in the oven because we don't have time to let it proof anymore. But you guys have time now. So take your time, go through things. Please let me know if you have any questions and have fun. Yes, Kate.
Chef, so when we're embarking upon this,
Mhm.
your personal opinion for success, so that, I don't know, I'm thinking what would make me feel better. What bread would you suggest to do first? Would you suggest to do the egg because it's easy, or would you suggest
Do the French bread first.
to tackle French bread first
Okay,
and
so
then follow with the levain?
probably what I would do, number one, is I would make the pouliche,
Okay.
right? So that's, you get a bowl, you get flour, that little bit of yeast and water, and you mix that up and you cover it, you set it aside, boom, check that off, it's done. You don't have to worry about that until tomorrow.
Okay.
And then you do your French bread.
Okay.
Because your French bread is just 4 ingredients. You just dump it right in the mixer. It's really kind of hard to mess it up unless you don't measure something right.
Right.
And then make your French bread. And then
Okay.
when your French bread is fermenting, then you can start doing your mise en place for whatever bread you want to do next.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that's kind of how
Um,
yeah.
And then, so just so I know, I could go back and read it.
We're losing you, Kate. Nope. Sorry, Kate. We've lost you. We can't hear you. I see you, Juan. Kate, we can't hear you.
Did you hear me?
Nope. Not
Okay.
a word. Sorry.
Okay, so let's try it again. Is it necessary to, because my kitchen is cool,
Mhm.
is it necessary to refrigerate the pouliche, or can I just like leave it on top of the fridge till tomorrow?
I wouldn't leave it overnight out.
No?
No, it might be too much. If it's really cool, maybe it'll be okay. But I would leave it out to get it going
Yeah.
for about 8 hours, and then put it in the refrigerator so it doesn't
Okay.
go.
And then just, when you take it out, do you wait until it becomes room temp again before you introduce the rest of the French bread?
If I'm going to do, well, you're going to take it out the next day out of the
Right.
refrigerator and immediately stir in 5 ounces of flour. And
Okay.
you don't have to wait for it to come up to temp to do that.
Okay.
But you
Okay.
stir that in and then but you will let it come up to temp after you do that to kind of reactivate.
Okay, so put in the 5 ounces and let it come to room temp, whatever that takes. Room temp is what we're thinking in between 68 and 71 degrees.
Yeah.
Right around in there.
Yeah.
Do we thermometer it maybe
No.
to check it, or
No.
does it matter?
No,
Don't get.
I watch it. I watch it visually for activity.
Okay.
When on day 2, when you stir in that 5 ounces, it's going to
Yeah.
look very stiff. It's not going to look liquidy like it did the day before. It's going to look much stiffer. But as it sits, in about 3 or 4 hours, you're going to see it loosen up again. And then in about 5 hours, you're going to see it start bubbling again. And then after 6 or 7 hours, it will have doubled in size again. And that's when I put it in the fridge to work it next day.
Again, and then you pull it out the next day. When you pull it out the next day, and we're going to shape it, do our slicing.
You will need to let it come up to temp the next day.
Okay.
So
We're gonna wait.
I get up very early in the morning. Typically, it's my habit. So I go around the house and I pull out anything that I need. I'll pull out
Okay.
butter if I know butter has to be
Okay.
softened. I'll pull doughs out of the refrigerator, that kind of thing.
Okay. All right, cool. Thank you.
Yep.
We're going to try.
Yeah.
And then we take pictures all the way along, and we are just become perfect chefs. Thank you so much, Chef.
Well, we'll at least enjoy ourselves and have some good food to eat
Hey, yeah.
while we're locked away and looking at the birds outside and wishing we could do something.
We're not really locked away, considering what we're able to do with this. This is great.
Okay. All right, guys. Well, I have every confidence that you guys are doing a great job. Enjoy the bake. Please, please, please reach out for any questions. And I look forward to seeing your submissions and seeing how you're getting on. So please be in touch, and I'll see you guys next Wednesday.
Thanks for your hard work, because I know it takes a bit to get this all done.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.